Hey everybody, this is Blake here, and welcome to my review of Mortdecai. And yes, I have shaved my head once more, and that was kind of hard to do so. I was totally rocking that middle-aged sex offender look, but what can you do? Anyway, moving on to Mortdecai. When I first saw the trailer for this movie, I actually thought it looked pretty funny. The jokes made me laugh, the lines seemed really clever, and it seemed like Johnny Depp was having fun. I'll talk a little bit more about that later and why that probably should have concerned me more. But then the second trailer came out and it had a total opposite effect on me. It seemed a bit too Pink Panther remake-ish for my liking. Just way too broad, way too slapsticky. It didn't make me laugh at all. So that was strange. And then, of course, the movie comes out in January, which is very rarely a good sign. And the critics got a hold of it, and they practically gang raped it. In fact, I was thinking, maybe I shouldn't have shaved my head. It would have been much more fitting going into this review with the middle-aged sex offender look. Um, and then I watched it, and honestly, maybe it was just the low expectations, but I didn't really mind it. I mean, I won't say I liked it. I didn't think it was hilarious, but it didn't piss me off like I thought it was. In fact, part of me actually kind of wishes I was angrier, um, because this is probably going to be a very boring and underwhelming video, but hopefully it will be short. If I do like list off every single point, as a critic, what this movie does well and what it does poorly, it will really seem like I do hate this movie because for the most part, like, the critic in me could only really remember the bad stuff, where it did screw up, but it once again it didn't annoy me, it didn't piss me off, it just went eh. I got through it all right. I was more annoyed with Taken 3 and The Woman in Black 2. And maybe even Black Hat, even though I think Black Hat was definitely the better movie. But that's because, I mean, I had low expectations going into those films, but I shouldn't have had. Those should have been at least decent movies. And in the case of Black Hat, it was a decent movie, but it should have been a good movie. Whereas with Mortdecai, it's like I said, I really felt nothing. I thought the Pink Panther films were a lot worse. I really disliked those movies. And in the case of Mortdecai, it seemed like it was, if there was a scale of comedy, it did occasionally amuse me. I will admit that I did laugh every few minutes, and some of the over-the-top antics did make me smile. Then other times, it's just like it would kind of miss, and other times it'd be just kind of annoying, but it really thinks it's being funny and cute. And then like it just kept going back and forth, but at the same time, I never found it to be outright hilarious, and I never found it to be the outright awful. It just was always kind of in the middle ground, going back and forth. On Johnny Depp, man, what happened to poor Johnny Depp? There was a time when I used to consider him to be my favorite actor. I thought he was great. And then Pirates of the Caribbean happened, and even though he's really good in those movies, yeah, I like Jack Sparrow and I like those films, alright. It just seemed like after that, Johnny Depp became almost a parody of himself. And I just don't like it as much. It's sometimes it works more than other times. I really didn't mind him in Lone Ranger, even though I understand why so many people really hated that movie. I actually thought that, well, he was a lot better than his co-star. But like, it seems like either he'll do a total sellout performance such as Transcendence or The Tourist, where it doesn't really seem like he's acting at all. Now maybe he's just really miscast and he did the best he could with such limited material, but he was just outright boring in those movies, whereas otherwise, like in the case of Dark Shadows, Alice in Wonderland, especially Alice in Wonderland, and almost every other movie I see him, he's just too over the top and too broad. And I kind of wonder if maybe the director, they think of, the success he had with Pirates of the Caribbean, and they're they're just thinking that maybe, and see, I'm kind of stumbling over my words because there really isn't a whole lot to say about Mortdecai, but maybe they just figure, well, people want an over-the-top, broad Johnny Depp, so they're really going to play up on those mannerisms that you expect from him. Whereas I think Johnny Depp, he needs to be reeled in somewhat. He needs to be more quirky than outright goofy. And unfortunately, this film, he's more outright goofy. Sometimes it works. Sometimes he does sell his lines really well, and he has good comedic timing, and his mugging will work okay. And then other people will play off him pretty effectively. But generally, if you don't like this more modernized Johnny Depp, once again, the real over-the-top Johnny Depp, you're probably not going to like him here, and you probably won't like the movie for that. Otherwise, everybody else, they do fine. I think Paul Bettany was the best. He also had the best role. But yeah, everybody else, Gwyneth Paltrow, Ewan McGregor, they're playing relatively standard roles, and but they did fine, and the writing and it's very much a standard caper formula. One thing I thought that was strange about this movie is that in terms of tone, it almost seems like it was designed for a younger audience, much like Pink Panther was, except it's rated R, and that's kind of strange. And I think it's just going to be a bit too slapsticky and goofy for an audience who wants an edgier, raunchier comedy, but at the same time it does have a bit too much of edginess and raunchiness to be enjoyed by younger audiences, or I'm talking like kids. Teenagers probably will get the biggest kick out of these gags. The direction is really energetic, but yeah, there's not a whole lot he could do either. It's a nice looking movie at the absolute least. He's kind of going for the Grand Budapest Hotel in terms of style, that kind of look, but that's a much, 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 much better movie. In fact, this is pretty much the lowbrow version of that. But like I said, I didn't really feel anything. I wasn't angry, I wasn't happy, it just kind of went over my head, and I was like, had its moments, but I'm probably not going to remember it. So would I recommend it? If you want, if you really want to see this, regardless of what the other critics are saying, then be my guest. Otherwise, I just say wait until Netflix, or whatever, however you get your rentals. Don't spend any real money on it. And then if you don't think it looked very funny at all, then just skip it, and you won't really have missed out on anything either. So that's all I have to say. I did not do a written review, but I have done written reviews of Black Lion, which is an anime film, which has like ninjas and robots and lots of gore. Ragnarok, the Norwegian monster movie. Scream, the 1980s slasher film. My favorite and least favorite movies of the year list, the written version, and I think that's it. Be sure to follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I shall see you guys later.